Well, hello everyone. I'm Temple Hayes, and I'm so thrilled to be with my trailblazing friend, the beautiful human, TJ Woodward. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And if you are taking the time to join us in real time or after time, we want to really celebrate you because it says that you have not totally collapsed into the do's and the gottas and the busy making of the holidays. It means that there's a presence and an energy and a calming that you really get to enjoy that. So we wanted to offer that today to fit and slide in your calendar, knowing that it's real important that we take care of ourselves because it all starts from that. Hello, TJ.
Well, hello, my friend Temple. I, as always, love being with you, love these conversations. And I'll just remind everyone that I will be every now and then glancing down at my phone only because I'm going to see if you're live with us and if you have questions, comments. I like to say questions, comments, or smart remarks. It's all welcome. So I'll be keeping an eye on that. But I'm happy to be here with you, Temple.
It's so welcome. I was thinking the other day, perhaps you and I were talking, this is the first holiday season in close to 40 years that I haven't started planning and talking about and being a participant in events around Christmas in July.
In
And
July.
so as a team, yeah, we started latter part of July or early August. And by the time Christmas got around, or the season, or Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, and all that, it's like, is it here yet? I mean, surely it's already here. It felt like an after effect of an experience that I really wanted to be a part of. So it's been so fun this year, as different, to just be part of it and look forward to it coming and not feel like it had already happened. That's what I'm wanting to say about that. It's
Yeah.
been nice. It's been really nice.
Yeah, I certainly get that. It's interesting. I can't remember who I was talking with, but basically the holiday season is now about 25 to 30% of our year, which is pretty significant to like be in the energy of that. So I think it's nice for us to pause. And for me, I want to reflect on the deeper meaning of the holiday season, whether that be winter solstice, which is a few days away, where in the northern hemisphere we have the longest night, which there's so much richness in the longest night and then the return of the light. Hey, that rhymed. I like it. The longest night and the return of the light. So maybe that's one
That was
thing we can talk
impressive.
about.
That was impressive. Or in November, Diwali, of the
Yeah.
time of lights. There's so many magical things that are available to us. And I don't know the day or the time or the way, but somehow for me, what I felt like was important when I was in a leadership public capacity was that for Christmas and for all that connected, and also Easter, that I wasn't running around burnout, worn out, complaining, forgetting that I choose,
Mm.
but that I really was away shore in peace, calm, in religious science, we used to talk about the seven aspects. I
Mm.
don't know if you did that within Agape or your community, but it was peace, power, love, light, joy, beauty, and wisdom.
Mm.
Peace, power, love, light, joy, beauty, and wisdom. And to feel those within our container of in what areas can I add more, um, do less of, or change, or journal, or bring forth something that wants to be born from me, moving forward. So um, it's great to just have those anchors that we grab hold of, that we don't get caught up. We used to say in laughing, and I know you do in recovery, oh my goodness, it's the time where it's sugar, more alcohol, family emotional stuff on the subconscious driving. And anyway, thank you, TJ, for being a great model for
Oh my
sure.
gosh. Well, thank you. And it is interesting because there is so much happening, and everything you just mentioned, I totally relate to. And I'm thinking about that metaphor of the longest night and how we honor, you can't put a seed. I say this often, but I love the metaphor. If you put a seed out in the sunshine and only give it light, it won't grow. It needs to go into the darkness. It
Mhm.
needs to take time under the soil. Those are the conditions that we can use as like the conditions in consciousness, right? The time in the silence. And it is a very busy season. There's a lot going on in the world. Yet again, there was violence, yesterday, with people celebrating Hanukkah on the first night of Hanukkah in Australia and some other places. So we can hold that and, not how do we not get swept away with that and be the anchor for those beautiful seven attributes that you mentioned? And a big part of it for me is to pause and just consciously remind myself to unplug from that, not pretending like it's not happening, but tap into the deeper truth within myself, that place of inner stillness. And that's represented by that seed that needs new growth in that darkness.
Yeah, I love that. And what is that they call it? The gloaming.
Hmm.
The
I don't know
gloaming,
this.
the gloaming is the time when it's it's almost turning into night, but
Mhm.
you'll notice it when you look in the sky around the time that it's going to become dark. It's like everything seems animated.
Hmm.
Yeah, the gloaming. And there was a movie about that with Christopher Reeve, by the way. Um, my mother always read People magazine, so I stay up on, all those kind of things. But it really is that beauty and I think where it seems to me teachers like us are learning because we talk about being inclusive, we talk about being exclusive, we carry these conversations, they're well in meaning, but really we're talking about learning how to be in both and.
Yeah.
Somebody asked me one time, are you really that joyful? And I said, I am. You're really that joyful? Yes, I am. Well, how did you get there? And
Hmm.
I said, the only way I got there is I realized that joy is not the absence of sadness.
That's right.
It's the ability to hold both and containers simultaneously so your heart stays open. We can grieve the events
Yeah.
like your neighbors in Brentwood. That's been on my mind
Yeah.
today. Rob Reiner and his beautiful wife, Michelle. We can feel the level of compassion and care and concern and praying for the I am consciousness to prevail, or the Hanukkah gathering, or in the school, or all those things. And I'm glad um, that we are affected. See, that's my concern about the world, in the world that I hear about, because you have to allow for that, are the people that aren't affected. I don't want it to get to a place with me that it doesn't bother me anymore. And I don't want to give flippant answers like, oh, well, I don't really believe in death. So, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
It's, I don't want to lose my humanity,
That's right. And
right?
one of the things that when I hear you speaking that I really relate to is my own personal journey of going through that period in my spiritual journey where I was really wanting to bypass the conditions of the world. It
Mhm.
was still kind of either or, like either everything is love and light, or I'm going to have to look at this that would appear to be, discord and darkness and pain.
Right.
And, Buddha said 2,500 years ago, there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is of the world, pain is of the body, but suffering is in the mind. In the mind, in other words, how I frame it. And I agree wholeheartedly. One of the ways for me to work with the conditions of the world is actually to feel it, only because I spent a decade trying not to. I wanted to, oh, everything's love and light, Temple. We're not going to talk about that. We only want to talk about, and I think there's a tendency in some spiritual circles, new thought circles, some spiritual circles, even some recovery circles, where we only want to talk about the quote unquote positive. And I realized at some point that the integration is so important. And part of it is to realize that, yes, there are conditions in the world that are painful. There are things that happen. And like you, the last thing I would want to be is numb to that because, quite frankly, in my addiction and my early recovery and my early New Thought spiritual journey, I was kind of wanted to be numb to that. I wanted to pretend like none of that was happening.
Mhm.
And then through a series of events, chemicalization, a deepening of me realizing that it's about integrating that. It's not that the situations in the world aren't happening. As you said, it's both. And I can hold that and also hold a different possibility in the midst of it. And for me, the biggest key to it is allowing myself to feel without going into the story. And the story usually sounds something like this. This shouldn't be happening. Something's wrong here. That's when I start to suffer. Um,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that I'm saying it's okay that things are happening in the world, but these things are happening. There's so much love in the world and there's so much pain in the world. And for me, the spiritual journey isn't about removing myself from that. It's actually being in the midst of that.
Yeah.
And, one of the most profound teachings ever is to be in the world, but not of the world. And what does that mean? To be of spirit in the midst of it, then I can actually make a difference in the world without being in the fight and the struggle.
I love these conversations. I didn't know that's one of your favorite statements, Sue. It's been one of mine for years. I just love that. It just really moves me in such a way and anchors me. When I love wisdom through time.
Yeah.
And I remember a time when people would ask me, we're going way back, you don't like sugar? And even today, I don't. But back then, in my 20s, oh, you don't like sugar? Oh, no, I don't care for sugar. While I'm sitting there drinking the largest bottle of wine made to humankind at the time with the tumbler. No, I don't partake of sugar. Oh, no, I don't care for sugar. When I'm like sugaritis right there, left and right. Or when people would say, you don't seem to ever act like you're angry.
Mm.
Oh no, no, that doesn't really, no, like Wanda Sykes, no, I don't know I don't have a relationship with anger. I don't know. I guess I've worked through that. How cray cray, because when I stopped smoking and I was raw and naked to the moment
Yes.
and had to respond to something right in front of me, and my whole body was a shaking and a shaking like, ah. It's like, so we give thanks for wisdom, but
Hmm.
where I feel with the gifts of light awareness that you and I are talking with today, what I would hold would be for people during this season going into the new year, that when you hear yourself talking about an incident or an event or something
Mm.
occurring in your personal life or what you view on social or whatever, to say, how can I be multifaceted? How can I look at this story 5 different ways?
Yes.
And it's very expansive to do that, I find, because otherwise you're kind of responding to the energy of the person that posted the story, or you're caught up in the energy of other people's comments. But just when it's something that really moves your heart, to ask yourself, I now open to my consciousness of 5 different realities and
Yeah.
how to hold this. It's very enlightening, and it definitely helps you lighten up.
Yes. I love everything you're saying. But before I even say something, I wanted to say hi to everyone who's saying hi to us. Deborah is here from San Francisco. Julie is on. I believe she's probably in the Bay Area. And then Richard from the High Sierra. So, hi, everyone.
Well,
If you have any questions or
hello.
comments, please drop them in there. Simple, I love what you're saying. I recently did a short video called Living an Untriggerable Life. Untriggerable Life. And what I
Only you can say that many syllables in one sitting.
in one sitting. And in 90 seconds or less, I attempted to say what I meant by that. It didn't mean that there weren't things in the world that were something that quote unquote triggered something within me. But when I realized that what was actually happening was a wound was getting touched. So it wasn't so much what was happening, but more my story or my history around what was happening. So we've heard this before. If it's hysterical, it's historical. So if I'm having this big explosive reaction, it's most likely not just what someone did or what someone said. It's something that is unhealed within me. When I got to the point where I could say thank you for that, because the thank you, and believe me, I'm not saying, oh, this is so much fun. I love this surge of anger. But what I was aware of is that both and there's five different possibilities, 500 different possibilities in the way of viewing this. And I was stuck in an unconscious program that was reactive. And that
Mm,
reactive was about something that was getting touched. So when I learned to say, ooh, thank you, because, we hear if you're angry, count to 10. But does anyone tell you what to do when you count to 10? And to me, it's like pause when that quote unquote trigger happens and ask myself, what's actually true for me? What's getting touched here? Is this an old idea or an old story that's getting touched? And what if I can say thank you for that because there's a deeper healing that's available in this moment? And to me, the key is always let me feel it without going into the story. And if I notice myself attaching a story, there might be information. If I hear myself saying, this again, then that's where I really know, ooh, there's something exciting to work on because that's that repetition. That's that unconscious belief system that I have, the BS belief system that keeps me staying the way I've always been. Now, nothing right or wrong here, but if I want to grow and expand, I'm going to want to not continue to do and believe and say the same things over and over to myself. So when there's that moment of activation, I can look at it as a gift. Not that it is a gift,
yeah.
but I will choose to turn it into one.
Oh, I love that. I became aware recently. I love so much that comes from the Chinese. I love Chinese acupuncture. They're the best. I love the Chinese calendar. My wife and I are dogs. As far as loyal and to your own detriment and certain characteristics. I don't know if you've ever followed that at all, if you will have. However, we're in the calendar year of the snake, of wisdom, right? Of wisdom, and you're the snake, and then the shedding away.
Yeah.
And so I bring that up because it ends in February and we move into the year of the horse. And that's when activity happens, energy, things are clear, et cetera, et cetera. So think about also, I know I am, and I'm asking you to join me, of how has this been a year of shedding and what is yet to be shedded?
Yeah.
Right. And, that we talk about the monkey mind, we talk about the untethered soul with Michael Singer. We talk about how if it's not your voice, it's not you. And it is so shocking how you can just be in the stillness or watching nature or listening to the birds or just having peace, just those moments of groundedness and peace. And all of a sudden you'll hear, I wonder why she said that. What was she talking about me? I mean, what was it related to?
Mm.
And so it's like shedding things that just do not serve you as a person. And that's usually when you're wanting to pull something from the outside and pull it in. When we work with the teachings of Saint Germain, are you familiar with Saint Germain and the violet flame?
I'm not.
Okay, well, he is an ascended master and been around and been around and been around. And he wrote the I Am Discourse books. And so New Thought did not create the I Am teachings.
Right.
We use them,
Yeah.
which is, what it's supposed to be. But it's very powerful energy about how when we go inside and we feel the dark, the shadow, the light, and how we experience that, how we sometimes distract ourselves from bringing in something from the outside to start focusing on that. And it's a very powerful practice in that. I'm going to tell you later about how to get that book because it's so great to read before you go to bed because it sends your subconscious into a real activated place of clarity and purpose.
I love, and you know what I love about that too is science is now, and I'll say this, I don't mean to be judgmental, but I'll say science is catching up with what the mystics have been saying for thousands of years, right? A
Oh
lot
yeah.
of these concepts that science is like, oh, we create new neural pathways by having a different thought or having a different, usually they say behavior, right? I
Yeah.
have a different behavior over and over and over again. I create a new neural pathway, and then that becomes my natural way of being. I was thinking about my early days of New Thought the other day, and I was thinking about how much I was unaware of the inner narrative, completely unaware that it was running the show. And when I came to New Thought, it was almost like sandpaper. It was kind of it was just this startling awakening of like, oh my gosh, I'm kind of brutal with myself. So then I went about changing that, and it was a really important part of the journey because it was like have a new thought. And I love that. Michael sometimes will say, if you want to be a new thought, have one. And I
Right.
think that's great, right? Because just
Hmm.
I've been thinking the same thing over and over and over again. And Temple, you and I are dedicated to a lot of our conversation is yes, and yes, it's thought, and it's much deeper than that.
Yeah.
It's the energy or the frequency that we're holding. So I love the analogy of the serpent, the snake. I didn't even know it was my year. That's kind of funny, although now
Okay.
it's almost over, but that sounds good to me. But this idea of shedding that which is no longer serving us, and it's not shedding something that's bad or wrong. It's
No.
shedding something that served us for a period, and now our consciousness has grown and we have to shed that, right? So the analogy of the snake getting too big for its skin, that's
Hmm.
beautiful. That's a
Hmm.
beautiful way of framing it. I held this identity or this idea or this belief about myself or the way I presented myself or what I believe to be true about me. And then I have an awakening where I get quiet enough to realize there's more. Because there's always more. I love Course in Miracles says, all I know is not all there is to know. I remember repeating that to myself. I think I did that for like a month. And it wasn't like I don't know anything. It was like all I know is not all there is to know. There's a new way of seeing this. And then as I grew in my the awareness of my essential truth, my infinite being, that became outside those the skin I was wearing was outsized.
Hmm.
And then it started to shed and something new emerged. And so sometimes I think, my mind likes when things feel good, but
Hmm.
sometimes it's I'm going to learn to feel really well, right? Not feel great all the time, but like that depth of emotion allows me to have this shedding and this new way of seeing myself and the world. And that it's a beautiful process.
I've always loved the word familiar
Hmm.
because on the front side view of the word familiar is the word family.
Yeah.
And so it feels comfortable, could even feel safe.
Hmm.
It definitely feels familiar. But on the back of the word is the word liar,
I love
right?
that.
Liar. And it's so true because Michael, your buddy Michael Buckwith and mine, we used to laugh with people about that we had never taken a sabbatical, not a long length of time, certainly silent retreats, certainly things like that, but not a long length of time. And it was very clear to me it was time for me to do that,
Mhm.
and so it's been so fascinating to me because of just having the space of being comfortable by being uncomfortable
Mm.
and seeing that familiar, want to grab me and go, okay, well, maybe it's time for me to put together this, or it's time for me to
Yep.
do that, or it's fine for me to. And so it's just been so rich and wonderful because I can see now, not like you said, not good, not wrong, no regrets, nothing like that, but that always being on the go
Yeah.
um was that you don't have enough space to think about, do I even want to do it? You know, and I can see where a lot of things in my life, I was more committed to the commitment than I was to myself,
Mm,
right?
yes.
And that's what we're talking about with the holidays. You get so committed to getting the right present and making the right food and spending enough time with the children or those children or the people or that, and you're missing the you wanting to be born that may look very different. um, that was so freeing for me. For the holidays is when I just decided I I don't think I want to do that again this year.
I,
I think I want to do something different, or I don't think I want to fly to the Carolinas this year. I think I'd rather see you in July when you're not on sugar and I'm not, and we're not so busy, or whatever. And you know me, I don't really do that much sugar. You can't avoid it in our society, but to choose not to. Anyway, um you get the point that it's the gifts of yourself. Commitment is very important, but make sure it's your inner soul that's driving you towards those commitments.
yes, and I love what
Yeah.
you're saying. And we want to say hi to Brendan, who's watching from here in LA. Hi, Brendan. Thank you for tuning
Hi,
in.
Brendan.
And
Thank you
again,
for
remind
joining.
if you guys have any questions, comments, let us know. I'm looking here to see. Okay, we're good. I love what you're saying because there is something about unplugging from, whether we call it chaos, the busyness, or just the activity that we love. It's not like it has to be, oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. It can just be like, oh, I'm going to consciously choose to slow down and go within. My third book is Conscious Creation, and I create this model on how to consciously create our life. Because if I'm not consciously creating my life, what am I doing? I'm unconsciously creating it. And that's just, those programs that familial. I love that familiar, the family liar. I mean, you didn't say it exactly like that, but like that so much of it actually did come from family of origin stuff for me. And I was unaware of it, right? And all I mean by that is like I made these massive decisions when I was 6, 5, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
And, I look at a child that's so innocent and beautiful at that age. And I'm really have been reflecting on like, oh my gosh, that's the age I decided I was broken. And that decision became the operating system of my life. So of course I kept experiencing more and more brokenness. And then I was trying to fix, be in the world, trying to change things on the outer realm without doing a lot of the inner healing first. So pause, move within, take that seed out of the bright sunshine. We love sunshine, but go into that place of inner stillness, which is represented by the fertile soil. And the fertile soil and consciousness is a beautiful place to be, embracing the darkness, embracing that right now, what I need is to be still, because then I can listen to intuition, listen to the inner voice. It has been called a still small voice, but it does not need to be small at all. It can become the guiding voice in our life if I'm willing to slow down and listen and ask questions of that inner knowing. And I've gotten to a place where I can really sense where it's coming from. There's like an energy that happens when I'm in my mind, and the energy is kind of like this. And when I go in, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, there's a deeper knowing here, and that deeper knowing then becomes aligned with purpose. So it's more about inner alignment. And when I have that inner alignment, the conditions or the way we get there, so to speak, becomes so much less significant. I mean, I remember when I had the knowing that I wanted to do spiritual teaching, spiritual work. I then interpreted exactly how that was supposed to look in my mind. And you know what happened? It didn't happen that way. We want to say hi to Kimberly from NorCal. Hi, Kim.
Hi,
Okay.
Kim.
Yeah. How do we live a life more dedicated to listening to inner wisdom?
Well, it's like, we think about life as the life school. We're told we pick our parents and experiences and things like that as a soul. Um, and many of us get involved in either being authors or, in our case, leading a church,
Yep.
um, because not because we necessarily are saying or implying we figured it all out. We know, and we're waiting on you to know. No, not at all. It's just so we can stay in that lifelong school.
Yeah.
And because it really helps when you're teaching it to experience it. Right?
Bless
Excuse
you.
me. That's when you're live, we're live. Anyway, and I remember years ago when I was told by some colleagues that your church is an extension of your family. And I
Mm,
said, "Oh, no, I'm not going to get into that because we don't even sing the word family in the peace song, Oh, no, I don't think that." You know, but then when I looked around through the years, I could see there was Aunt Jane. Nah, 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 nah. You can tell she's not prepared today. I don't know why she would wear that dress and her knees are showing. And I mean, I literally had somebody say that to me one time. I just don't like your knees because I was, young and kind of sexy, wore those short skirts. I just don't like your knees, she said. And I said, well, I like them. Um, but there was Aunt Jane, and there was Uncle Tom, and there was Dad. And it's so in life school, all those characters show up
yeah,
if they are still living in us,
that's right.
and often you'll say to yourself, well, why is, Tom still talking about that? All these years later, that's such an old story. Well, because my consciousness is keeping it alive,
That's right. Yeah, and it's so
right?
interesting.
That's
It's
kind of
so
big right
interesting.
there. It is very interesting. Take it
Yeah.
on.
And well, yeah, and as soon as I
No,
make
take
peace,
it on. Take it
as
on.
as soon
Yeah.
as I make peace with that, then suddenly everything changes. So we have some comments and some questions. So I'm going to read them. Julie, this year with 6 adult children and 13 grandchildren, I could have been overwhelmed. Instead, I decided if I have a yes in my heart, the perfect and reasonable gifts would reveal to me, and they did easily. I now have time to enjoy family and friends and relax. And Deborah says, at the darkest time of the year here in the US is when I want to reflect and hibernate, and the culture is on party steroids.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
That's a good
And
one. That's a good
and
one.
then Brendan just said he had to jump off to go on to another Zoom, but he said, I love this conversation. Thank you both for doing this. It brightened up my day. Would love for you guys to do more of these. Well, Brendan, that is really cool because we're doing these once a month. So I'll continue to invite you to them. And my friend Chris Burns is watching from Colorado. Hi, Chris. I'm gonna why
Hi,
not just
Chris.
since we're alive, Chris, I want to let you know I'm gonna be in Colorado Springs next month. So I've been intending to text you so we can get together, but I'll be at the conference and I'd love to see you. Okay, so
How
that
fun is
aside,
that? Well, that's the beauty of doing it live. I love that, because that's just, I mean, you and I talk all the time, so we're doing this so that people can engage or they can share it with friends or they could ask us questions or they could say, next time, could you talk about suicide or I don't know if you're aware, but the film that was created 5 years ago called We Are Never Alone. We did some of it, some of the filming. The filmmaker, Michelle Pascal, filmed it where I used to serve in Florida. And Michael's in it,
Yep.
and Gabriella Wright. But anyway, it's been kind of lying dormant for 5 years. And now it just won another award at the London Film Festival, Florence, Italy. It's just so cool. It's cool because it's the subject,
Yeah.
every 40 seconds. And this is applicable because I'm like you. I want to talk about the fun things and jingle bells and joy, joy, joy. But other things, conditions of humanity, every 40 seconds, somebody takes their life. The majority are under 20.
Yeah.
And that being said, so let's walk that through. So I've had two aunts commit suicide, and my mom's best friend committed suicide. But back in the day, in the place of not knowing, that's why it's better not to write a book about something until you really understand so you don't look stupid. But when it would be like about suicide, I would think with compassion. I can't imagine why anybody would want to take their life. It's a gift from God, from the divine. I love life too much. I would never want to take my life. But then, but then, but then, and looking at it five different ways,
That's right.
but then a truth comes to me. Temple Hayes, for 14 years, you drove your car into transfer trucks off the highway. You were in jail. You ran over this. You hit a tree. Your car, you sold the parts for $75, a new car. Okay. So, was I the kind of person in my self righteousness that would take my life? No. But I
Mm.
was taking my life. I was slowly committing a suicidal act. And so it's so interesting and so helpful when we look at the different facets of life, because it just makes us broader in our understanding and our ability to really feel and reveal other people and their humanity without the judgment and without the energy of that. Um, yeah, it's just
Yeah.
amazes me. Yeah.
I'm reminded of a workshop I once attended, and the facilitator said, there is a word under your chair. I want you to reach under and get the word, find a partner, and tell your partner exactly how that word is true about you. And so someone said, oh, loving. Temple, let me tell you how loving I am. And then someone got murderer.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so, like, the idea was to look at this five different ways. The idea was to look through a
Mhm.
compassionate lens. The idea was to understand that I know, I'll put it in the I. There have been a couple of moments in my life that I truthfully did not have the courage to die by suicide, but I wanted to.
Yeah.
Right. And so that point where I felt so alone and so believed the identity of my own brokenness that I couldn't possibly see how I'd ever get out of it. I relate to that.
Yeah.
I like you relate to like how dangerously I lived in my addiction too. But this was a year and a half into my recovery.
Mm.
And what happened in that moment, because it was such a pivotal moment for me, was I realized that not only was I completely hopeless, and I suppose the definition of hopeless is I couldn't see that it would ever change because that's where I was at. I didn't ever see that I was going to get through the way I felt and believed about myself. And at that moment, I met a person, Mary Helen, who changed my life. And she was a new thought person. And she was, a person who went to India every year, studied with some amazing gurus in India, and she saw me and she held me in compassion instead of judgment. And I will never forget the way
Wow.
that felt. She wasn't saying anything that changed me. She was being with me in a way that was filled with love and compassion. And, working in the behavioral health field and the mental health care field, we have legal obligation to keep someone alive. And yet at the same time, I honor that moment where someone is like, I don't want to live. I honor that moment. Now let's be with that. Which part of me doesn't want to live? And this will sound a little crass, but I heard someone once say, you don't ever hear of someone shooting themselves in the heart.
Mm,
And it just pinged for me. I was like, yeah, I wanted this to stop. I wanted this idea I had about myself to stop. I wanted to stop believing I was broken. I wanted to stop seeing the world as broken. I wanted to stop pining and yearning for someone to rescue me because that was what I really wanted. And that had the other coin, which was let me rescue you. And I was in that cycle. It
mm,
was all a cycle of this deep sense of what was broken about myself and the world. And that being seen was seen beyond or through the identity of brokenness into that place of joy. And if
mhm.
there's any message to me this time of year, it's that message. The message is that the truth of who we are is joy and love and light. And we do get programmed to believe all these other sorts of things about ourselves. I don't know why we came to this planet. I don't know if we signed up for it. I don't know if we randomly landed here. But what I do know is that we don't come in with all that baggage. Now, I know some, some Hindus, maybe some Buddhists believe that we do come in with karma from other lives. That may be true. The core of who and what we are is love and light. And that does not mean that we avoid or pretend that the other isn't there. But the way Mary Helen saw me was she didn't um, remove or try to remove those identities. She simply saw through them. And
Mhm.
that was something that was so profound to me. And that has become my life's purpose at this point is to be that for other people, to see, to hold and to honor the five ways of seeing. Yes, I can see why and how you feel broken. Yes, I can see why and how you feel like you no longer want to be on the planet. I honor that. I honor that feeling. And I also see the love and the light that you are. I also see the preciousness of you. I also see the infinite being in the midst of that.
Yeah, and maybe you did have those things in a former life, but
Yeah,
you don't have to have them now.
that's right.
Like what always amazes me, I do feel and believe a sense of reincarnation. On
Yeah.
the other hand, I think that it's interesting that a lot of times you'll hear people talk about they reincarnated, but it always has to be someone like Cleopatra,
Cleopatra.
or someone famous or, whatever. How about just somebody that, was the janitor, whatever. Um, but yeah, there's always, it's still coming back to what you're saying, the gifts of what you choose to be in your house now. What is gives you a feeling of family? Because I'm not talking about family of origin. I'm talking about a sense of home. What within your being gives you a sense of, I feel at home? Like right now, I'm having this wonderful conversation with you, and I'm looking at one of my dogs just sound asleep. He's just enjoying, he's like, oh, Mom, I've heard this so many times. I'm just going to nod out. It's a feeling of home. And yet, to be aware of what sometimes wants to get in that makes a liar out of my thinking system, out of my belief system, out of, oh, that no longer works for me. You
Right.
know, we want to give thanks for the shocking moments that we have an awakening, that we no longer need to keep, doing what we're doing. I thought about doing a 10-year launch of celebration on my book, When Did You Die? But I'm so glad I didn't, because through this time I've had, I realize, ooh, I need to be more inclusive in this area. I need to talk
Mm,
more about that, because life brings us wisdom. And like in your books, conscious recovery, conscious creation, they're always evolving.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. And as we're sort of playing in this conversation, what I love about it is these really tangible tips and tools. Like I love that you're talking about the 5 ways to see it because I had a person say, is there a third option? She used to say that to me because I would say, well, either I'm either going to do this or this. It was very like,
Yeah.
I'm either going to, I don't know, sell everything I own and backpack through India for the rest of my life, or I'm going to, it was like these extremes. And she said, is there a third option?
Yeah.
So this idea of the 5 ways of seeing it, because how many times have we been told there's your truth, my truth, and the real truth is somewhere in the middle? No, we have our own perspective, our own lenses, and to honor that is to see the world through different eyes. And then I think the deeper thing for me is to hold the skin that I created, using that metaphor with the snake,
Mm-hmm.
as something that was perfect for that time, including my addiction, including the crazy stuff that I did, and including my time in jail, like you. And like, it's like all of that was part of the armor that I built that I thought was keeping me safe.
Yeah.
And true safety, I know now, it's so interesting. I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent, but we live in a culture that tends to think that youth is like, how many times you know, I mean, to say high school is the best time of our life. Oh my gosh, no, it's not. We know that's not true. It's like, come on. But we tend to
Uh,
think through the lens of like, youth is great. But I recently read a pretty extensive study, and people said their happiest decade and their most successful decade was their 60s.
mm,
And it's like, oh, isn't that interesting? And yet we have this idea that it's something else. And the only reason I'm saying that is like when I was in my 20s, I was so afraid and so concerned about how other people saw me, that I was pretending. There was so much pretending. There was so much putting on the right clothes or putting on the right face or like saying the right things. And all of that came from a deep sense of like not feeling worthy.
mm-hmm.
And as I've gotten more wise, as I've gotten older, and it wasn't because I became more spiritual or better, it was because I had those experiences, sometimes joyful, sometimes painful, of outgrowing the skin I was in and realizing, you know what people are thinking about me? Not much.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that as like to be dismissive, but like, no, all this stuff, I think, all of that I was doing was trying to guard this wounded inner self. And as I've healed that, going back to the untriggerable, it's like, yeah, there are things that might touch something within me, but today I know how to work with that. Today I know that it wasn't what someone said or did, it was this wound that got touched, and I can hold that and tend to that and be really compassionate with myself and allow myself to feel what's present. Oh, you don't have power over me like I thought you did, mom and dad. Like I've outgrown that skin, and what a beautiful thing.
I love it. I love it. I've been thinking about when you said my way, your way, or oh, there's a third way. To me, when we talk about that, it's like we're talking about comfort zone
Mm.
stagnation.
Mm.
When you're bringing in a fourth or fifth way, it's evolution. It's
Yes.
you're tapping into aspects of a future seer that you don't even know yet. And I find that very exciting.
Yeah. That's why I
Very
love the
exciting.
question, what else is possible?
Yeah. What else
It's like,
is possible? Yeah.
someone rear ends you on the freeway. Oh, what else is possible? Or I'm in the most incredible experience of my life. What else is possible? Right? To ask that question and to feel the expansion. Sometimes for me, I'll get to a place, and it's simple. I don't know if you relate to this, but I'll get to a place where suddenly I feel really like disoriented, almost like my equilibrium is off a little. And I'm like, oh, that's my consciousness expanding to see different ways, not the right way, just different ways. Wow, there's a new way. There's a greater way. And a lot of times it'll be pushing up against something that I'm very attached to, like my relationship with money, my relationship with sex, my relationship with how I see myself, all of the things that like can push something. It's like, oh, I look at this third, fourth, fifth, sixth way, and then I can feel really disoriented. So I would say, if you're feeling disoriented, congratulations, because you're reorienting yourself to a new way of seeing yourself.
Yep. The brand new is coming. You are the gift you're bringing yourself for the holidays this year. And TJ and I want to thank you for being with us today. And remember, we want to hear what you like to hear, what you want to know about, what you question, what you ponder. We love the involvement and the engagement. Do you want to check one more time and see if there's someone we want to say hello to?
Well, we've said hello to everyone who's watching live. If you're watching this in the replay, drop comments in and Temple and I will keep an eye on it and we'll do our
And
best to
that's
respond.
right. And hello to all of you. All right. Blessings.
Peace and blessings, everyone.